Hello and welcome to a new episode of the podcast where today I'm delighted to be joined by Corrina Beasley. Hello, Corrina.
Hi.
Hi. And you are a hypnotherapist, which is what I wanted to sort of talk to you about, really, because it's something I don't know as much about as I think I should, really. And I just think it's really kind of a really interesting field. And I'm also quite interested in how scary a word it is because it's got hypno at the start of it. So we can talk about that. But I always start these things with um, asking you a little bit about your upbringing, or basically about your life before hypnotherapy, and what kind of how it was before hypnotherapy, and how things have led you to where you are now, basically.
Okay, great. So yeah, I had quite a colourful past life pre-hypnotherapy. So I was born and raised in southeast London. My dad was Irish and my mum is half Irish and half Polish. Um, and I think my childhood was pretty alternative. So it was a really I came from a really loving family. We all loved each other dearly. And that was always very evident. But so my dad was a biker. So I grew up in like the 80s and 90s, before, tattoos were popular. And, if someone had a tattoo, they were a biker and they were scary, So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
Weird the way it's all changed with tattoos, isn't it? Yeah,
crazy. Now it's kind of odd if you don't have a tattoo.
yeah, quite. Yeah,
You're
yeah.
the odd one out now. But so my parents were pretty young when they had me, and they had a real lust for life. So we would go to bike rallies, we would have tattoo parties at my house. That was kind of the norm. It really was a party house. I don't know if you've ever seen the film Mask with
I
Sharon
have
in it.
Rocky Dennis. Yeah, yeah,
Rocky Dennis, yeah. So that was kind of my life without Rocky Dennis in it, but that whole kind of setup
right.
was pretty much my childhood. So spent weekends at pubs, bike rallies, parties. Those parties would often spill over into a Monday. Obviously, we had a lot of the highs and lows that come with that go hand in hand with that kind of lifestyle. But it was always there was always love in the family. I was only an only child until I was 11. So the people that came to the party, so mum and dad's friends, they just treated me like an equal. I was never a child. So from a really young age, I learned to interact with such a varying array of people and learned how to communicate with a wide variety of characters, really. Um, and and I guess that gave me an opportunity to kind of view the world from lots of varying perspectives and take lots of different people's ideas on, and it really opened my mind, I think, from a young age to not take everything on face value, and to look beyond that, and that we're all so different. And so yeah, so at home we very rarely went to the doctors. My mum would be firmly believed in like not taking loads of tablets. We were always encouraged to look at alternative therapies before going down the conventional route. We had aloe vera plants growing in case we ever burnt ourselves, kind of stuff like that. So it was always there to, if you had problems, look for alternatives before going to the doctor,
Yeah,
I think. Um, so kind of the belief system that I grew up in. So my parents were brought up as Roman Catholics, and I went to a Catholic school. My parents didn't fit that model, I don't think, very well, and they really became quite disillusioned with the church, and they always believed that there was probably a higher being, another side, but that wasn't necessarily God, I suppose.
yeah.
um, and they certainly didn't believe that we should go to church every week and recite prayers, you know. So, and obviously that's fine if you do, and that's cool, but that wasn't really part of their kind of model of the world. But then, so my nan died when I was about 7. I'm trying to think of the most kind of prominent moments that sort of brought me to where I am today. But so my nan died when I was 7, and my mum really started gravitating towards spirituality. She would go and see lots of psychics, and as the years progressed, she started tarot reading herself. She does a lot of meditating. She probably gravitates more towards kind of the pagan belief system. And then life really slowed down once my brother was born when I was 11. You know, the party stopped. Mum and dad kind of grew up a little bit. But I played guitar, and I was absolutely adamant that I was going to be a rock star. So and I absolutely loved science, and I remember, so I applied to go to the Brit School, which is a performing arts school. It was quite new at the time. It had only been open for a few years, but it was kind of like Fame, you know, the film Fame. It was kind of a bit like that. And so I applied for there, and I managed to get a place, which was amazing. But I remember my science teacher in my old school kind of begging me, please don't go, you could be a scientist, don't go. And I was like, no, I'm going to be a rock star, I'm going to take over the world. So off I went to the Brit School and played guitar. It didn't last very long before I then decided, no, I wanted to be a journalist, and you know, kind of evolved from there. But I always loved science, and I was always intrigued about the mind and how our minds work. Anyway, on another little kind of side tangent, I suppose, and it will all tie in, I suppose, at the end. I completely idolized my dad. You know, he was my absolute and utter hero. He lived life on the edge. We all used to joke that he had 9 lives, you know, because he would do this crazy stuff, and we'd think, oh my God, how has he even survived that? How is he even still here? And it was really interesting going back to, you know, seeing how people look at other people, because people used to really judge Dad because of the way he looked. So, you know, he'd pull up, he'd bring me to school on his motorbike, he'd have an open-faced helmet and his cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and, you know, people used to give him a wide berth. But what was so interesting is that honestly, he was like the kindest, most loveliest, softest man that there was. And he always used to be in the you know, the right place at the right time. Like, he saved one of his friends from drowning. He was in the swimming pool once, and there was a little girl who was drowning, and he jumped in and saved her and brought her to her parents. And the parents looked at him like, what are you doing with my daughter? What have you done? You know, and he's like, oh, she was drowning, you know. And then later on in life, that you know, there was this boy, this secondary school boy, he managed to get himself impaled on a railing at school. Dad was kind of outside pottering around in his car, and this boy had managed to get himself off and get over to Dad and say, can you help me? And he was as white as a sheet, and Dad saw it and was like, instantly, get in the car, I'm bringing you to hospital. But the irony is, because of the way Dad looked, they instantly, not the hospital, but the school had thought that Dad had abducted this boy. The doctors were all saying to Dad, thank you so much, you've basically saved this boy's life, you know, thanks to your actions of getting him here so quickly, he survived. But he had to go in to be questioned by the police. He had to, you know, it was just mind-blowing, you know, just people's perceptions of, I just don't think he would have had that if he was in a suit, you know, kind of,
yeah,
and look different.
I was a punk rocker, so I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Right, yeah,
same sort of feedback, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. So so I think those sort of events really shaped how my mind works and how I think about things. But so yeah, the bond with Dad was amazing. So Dad's lust for bikes was just contagious, and we would spend so many weekends watching bike racing together and going away for weekends to watch the superbikes. I mean, that man really knew how to party. And it was funny because actually growing up, did you used to watch Absolutely Fabulous?
Yeah.
So my parents used to joke that I was the resident grown up, and I was Safi from Absolutely Fabulous.
Yeah.
So I'd often kind of put my Safi hat on and try and get him back from, you know, drunken nights out. But that love for bikes was just there and kind of ingrained in me. So when I was 17, I passed my motorbike license and got myself this VFR 400 and used to drive up to university in Farringdon every day on my motorbike, which was great fun. Until me and Dad had a bike accident, which I got up and walked away from, and as did Dad. But people kind of looked at us like, how did you survive that? And again, that was one of Dad's 9 lives, I think, kind of ticked off, and one of mine, maybe. But anyway, we had this real closeness, and even, you know, into my 30s, I would spend many kind of drunken nights chatting to my dad on the phone for hours. This was after I was married and had kids, you know, and my husband would get up in the morning and be like, was you on the phone to your dad again? I was like, yeah, feel a bit hungover, you know. So there was a really that tight bonds there. So my 20s were crazy. You know, I think most of our 20s were crazy, right? You know, I went to gigs most nights. I loved rock music. I was, you know, and it was kind of the year I was still living at home but working full time, so you had that kind of money to be able to go and do crazy stuff. So
yeah, quite.
you know, I ended up doing road trips out to Coachella out in Palm Springs, and just used to hang around with lots of bands, had great fun. And then when I was 29, I got married and had 2 children, and that was really, I think, when anxiety just hit me. Like, it was like hitting a brick wall, really. I think I had a mixture of maybe postnatal depression, and probably looking back on it, I always had a level of kind of high functioning anxiety. You know, I was always overthinking, always over analyzing everything. I had this real fear of failure, you know, striving perfection. It's easy for you to say. You know, I'd dwell on the past, so I think it was always there. But then it kind of, I found myself with this baby, and I was like, oh, what kind of keep this human alive? How do I even do this? You know, you kind of have that element of, maybe not everybody, but I did have an element of feeling alone, kind of scared, you know, overwhelmed, and then also grieving for the life I had in my 20s, you know, that kind of free-spirited, being able to go out when I wanted and do what I want, and you can't do that when you've got a baby or children in tow. So I really struggled with anxiety, but then you're so busy, you kind of forget about it. It kind of gets easier, life gets easier, and you sort of move on and you think, oh, it's just a blip, you know, it was just having the kids, life's okay. And then 3 years ago, pretty much to the day, well, kind of a few days ago, I got a phone call to say Dad had an accident. So he'd drunk a bottle of Jack Daniels, which wasn't unusual for Dad. Tried to get himself to bed. It turned out he'd fallen down the stairs and hit his head on a cabinet at the bottom of the stairs. So Mum said the ambulance is taking Dad to King's College Hospital. I'm like, right, okay, is he all right? And she's like, well, you know, he's got a cut on his back and he wasn't really conscious. When they rolled him over, he was sick. So, but I think he's all right. You know, we'll go and I'll let you know how it is. And instantly, I think you know, don't you? You have that kind of feeling in the pit of your stomach that something isn't quite right. That isn't right. It's not okay. And I think Mum was in shock. So anyway, Spoke to my brother. We both went to the hospital. We got brought into the family room, and basically told that he'd done terrible brain damage, and that he was going to die, basically, which was just such a bolt out of the blue, obviously completely unexpected. They thought he wasn't going to last that day. So we called for all my aunts and uncles to come over from Ireland, and we were just hoping that he'd survive until they arrived, and he did. He actually survived 5 days before he passed away, and he'd used up all of his 9 lives basically by that stage. And I think then you kind of go into, I kind of go into clipboard Corrina mode, and just go, right, what needs to be done? Let's arrange the funeral, make sure we have the best party, the best send-off for him. And we did. So we had a great send-off for him in the January. In the March, we said to Mum, now Mum had only just turned 60, so she's still really young. We said to her, come on, let's go out, let's do something. It was her birthday, 3 months after, 4 months after Dad had passed, but let's go out and try and celebrate, because he'd want us to. So my husband and I took her to the Shard for brunch. We thought it would be a really nice thing to do. She'd never done anything like that. We had a few drinks, and she walked into the revolving doors and fell over and broke her hip. So I ended up in hospital with her. She finally came home, and a few days later we all went into lockdown. So it was just kind of a whirlwind of events. I think that time was crazy for everyone, right?
Well, yeah, but particularly for you, Will.
Well, and then obviously there was COVID and lockdown. Germs had always been a big thing for me, and that was kind of like my worst nightmare. Realized that there was a germ out there that could actually kill us. My husband still had to go to work, which many people did, and I remember making him stand on the doorstep and strip all of his clothes off before he came into the house, and spraying him before he came in. And then we had homeschooling and all the rest of it, and then I just think my mind just blew up eventually. So we went to go and get my first vaccination, and I'd always had a few palpitations, which I now kind of know why, but also I think it's a lot to do with my anxiety. I get heart palpitations, but a few days after I had the vaccine, my heart completely started racing and I couldn't stop it. And then I got into a complete panic, ended up in A&E, and they put me on numerous ECG monitors throughout the course of 4 hours. And they found that I had this thing called a bigeminy, which is where your heart beats irregularly. So you kind of get 2 beats together and then you skip a beat and then you beat together anyway. And they made me leave the hospital. They made me leave the hospital. They said, right, okay, it's fine. You've got a bigeminy. We're going to refer you to the cardiologist. If you don't hear anything back within 2 weeks, make sure you chase it up. It's really important that this is checked out. So I walked away from the hospital thinking, I've got a heart issue. I'm going to die. And my catastrophized thinking kicked in. I became hyper aware of everything that was going on with my heart. I couldn't move off of the sofa because I was terrified I was going to have a heart attack. I couldn't take my children to school. I basically had kind of, I know you don't call it this anymore, but I had a complete and utter breakdown. And I think that's such a rubbish term, but for no other way of explaining it, and just so that people kind of understand, I suppose, what happened. I just completely lost control of my anxiety. And I then went to the doctors, against everything that I'd been brought up to do. It was kind of, go to the doctors. And I was like, can you give me some anxiety pills? Because actually I'm now really bad. And I don't think it's all my heart. I think it is anxiety. And they gave me some pills, which then when I got home, I thought, I don't want to take these. What am I doing? Anyway, to cut a really long story short, a friend of mine suggested hypnotherapy.
Okay.
She's a reflexologist, and she said, "Do you know, have you tried hypnotherapy before?" And I was like, "No, I don't want people messing around with my mind. Why would I want to be? Why would I want to go and have any hypnotherapy?" Anyway, it got to the point where I was so bad, I just wasn't functioning, and I was like, something has to change, because all right, I might have this heart issue, but actually I'm making it 10 times worse. Something needs to change. I can't live like this anymore. The time is now. It needs to happen. And then that same friend recommended RTT hypnotherapy, which is not actually the hypnotherapy that I practice now, but it's about kind of going back to past events, and desensitizing those events, which will then help you deal with the traumatic event that's happening at the moment.
This is rapid transformational therapy.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. And it worked wonders. And then I was a bit like, wow, this thing's pretty cool, you know. And the more I used it and used all the skills that my hypnotherapist had taught me, and she taught me lots of breath work exercises, the more I then started reading and researching about breath work and hypnotherapy and how you can change your mind through hypnotherapy. I just became more intrigued, and also thought, gosh, this modality helps so many people, but there's so many people that, like me, thought it was, you know, a form of mind control, and it was something to be scared of, and actually, obviously it's not, and we'll go into that in a little while, but I was just intrigued, and it was the scientific part of me that loved it, because it all made so much sense. Like the whole hypnosis model and theory of the world and how your mind works just made complete sense to me. And I haven't stopped since then, really. So I've gone from course to course, and I've set up my own practice. And
Okay,
yeah,
so
so that's how I got here, I suppose.
cool. Okay, so
That's
when
quite
you went,
long-winded, wasn't it?
no, it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. One thing that's got nothing to do with anyone really, but whereabouts in South London were you?
So I was originally born in Dulwich, or I was brought up in Dulwich, and then we moved to Downham, which is kind of near
Well,
Catford.
between Bromley and Catford, yeah,
Yeah,
aren't you?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, that was just me being nosy, really. I don't suppose it's very professional, but I'm quite interested in the hypnotherapy. Your first sort of experience of it. So, first couple of things, really. Did you have to sort of jump through any hoops in your head to actually go to it if you were like, scared of it or cynical about it or whatever?
No, I think, do you know, at that stage, I was prepared to do anything to get better.
Yeah.
So I was able to put all of that aside, and actually my hypnotherapist was lovely, and we had, you know, a half-hour 40-minute chat together before I went into hypnosis with her, and I just instantly felt at ease and relaxed, and basically said, look, I can fix you, we can do this, you just have to be open to it. And I was like, yeah, let's do it, I just want to be fixed. So I think I just wanted it, I wanted to be better more than I was scared of it then, you know.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah. The pain pleasure thing, I suppose, isn't it? You were more worried about the pain to worry. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So how 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 long did it take to get you from where you were to a much better place? How often did you see the person? How long
So
over?
with RTT hypnotherapy, I had one intense session which was about 2.5 hours long, and we done that over Zoom, which was lovely, and that's actually how I work as well, over Zoom. And I then had she then gave me an audio to listen to for a month after the session, which I would listen to every day after the session. And then I had one more hour-long top-up session, and that was it. But
I didn't
I think
expect you to say that, I've got to say. I thought you'd say, well, 6 months later after going every week or whatever,
no, and that's the beauty of hypnotherapy. It's talk therapy absolutely has its place, but hypnotherapy is solution focused, and it's all about obtaining the life that you want, and obviously there is an element that you can go and desensitize traumatic events if you feel like you need to, but it's all about achieving the future that you want. So you go in, you do the work, and you get out again. This is not a therapy that you spend years or months doing. It's really short-lived, and it's really quick, and those changes take effect really quickly.
What are those changes? What's going on from your professional point of view? Because I'd imagine a lot of people would be quite surprised to sort of hear that you can clear the decks in such a quick way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, let me give you a bit of an overview, because I think that will probably answer your question. So
Yeah. That's probably
I
the
mean,
question I was asking. Yeah.
well, look, in our brain there are like 10 million microcomputers called neurons, okay? And there's as many support cells, and these billions of neurons are capable of talking to 10,000 others simultaneously, all at the same time. And there are more connections possible in the neurons, between the neurons in your brain, than there are atoms in the universe. I mean, honestly, that blows my mind, that fact in itself. And really, the more complex something is, the more potential for disorder exists, right? And we humans are so complex, so disorder can happen so easily and so quickly, right? But so we have a conscious mind and an unconscious mind, all right? And the conscious mind are the things that you are currently aware of. So it might be the sound of my voice, the computer in front of you, maybe the comfort of the chair that you're sitting on. But did you realize that the chair that you were sitting on was comfortable or not comfortable before I even mentioned it to you? But I brought it to your conscious awareness. So now it is in your mind. Now your conscious mind can only think of 7 things at one time, kind of plus or minus 2. But this unconscious mind that we have has thousands of processes and thought processes happening simultaneously, all at the same time. Okay. So I like to think about it as we've got our conscious mind, which is the gatekeeper, and the unconscious mind is like the inner workings of a clock. Okay. So the unconscious mind holds all of our patterns of behavior. So there will be a part of you in your unconscious mind that deals with anxiety. There'll be a part of you that might deal with metabolism. There's lots of different cogs in that unconscious mind. And we use hypnosis to bypass the gatekeeper, so bypass this conscious mind, and get into the unconscious mind and change the inner workings of that clock. Okay. And that's why change can happen so quick, because through talk therapy, for example, again, it definitely has its place and it has an important place, but you can't bypass that conscious mind. So that's the reason why hypnotherapy is so quick, because we can go in and make direct changes to the unconscious mind that you can't normally access. Because there might be times when, I'm going to go back to anxiety. Obviously, hypnotherapy can treat lots of different issues, but going back to anxiety, when I had my heart issue, I was like, why am I so scared? Look, they're going to fix it. It's okay. but I couldn't switch off that anxiety. And no matter how much of my conscious mind was telling me, Corrina, chill out, it's fine, what's wrong with you? I could not switch it because the alarm was raised in the unconscious mind. I had to bypass this conscious mind to get in to make those changes. That's how it happened so quick, I think, in a nutshell.
Yeah, that whole thing about the unconscious mind is absolutely fascinating, isn't it? The amount of times I've walked into a pub and thought, you know what, I'm going to have a coffee today. And the barman will say, what do you want? I say, I'll pint of Guinness, please. And yeah, my conscious mind gets overruled completely because of habit, which of course is a big part of what you work with, I would
Absolutely.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it. It plays out. The unconscious mind plays out automatically in the choices we make and the decisions we make. And we often think that, oh, it was our choice. We chose to, I don't know, if we're on a diet, we chose to eat that piece of cake, or we chose to get that takeaway. But actually it's not. It's an unconscious process that's running in our conscious mind to make those decisions, like you said, in the coffee shop or in the pub, sorry, and you're getting a coffee but you end up with a packet of crisps. Where did that come from? But that's running there. It's a habit, as you said, that's
Yeah.
installed.
You're asking people for quite a lot of trust then, aren't you? If you're saying, I want to bypass your gatekeeper and get right into your subconscious. Is trust an issue for people, do you think?
Well, I think there's two things to that. One, obviously, it's really important to trust and to connect with your therapist in whatever modality that will be. So you have to have a connection with somebody. Yes, so if you've got that rapport, you've got that trust. Okay, but there's another element to it. Now, we have all seen those hypnosis shows, right, where the hypnotist makes them quack like a duck or bark like a dog, or
Yeah, yeah.
I think what's really important for people to understand is I cannot make you do anything that you don't want to do.
I'm not going to start quacking like a duck then during
I
this.
promise. Don't tell him, guys, don't tell him. You really, the only reason that those people are behaving the way they are is because they want to be a form of entertainment. They want to take part, so they've opened their minds to allow that to happen, and equally, I can't treat people who aren't ready to change. If someone comes to me and says, my wife has told me to come to you because she wants me to give up smoking, can you make that happen? I can't make that happen. I can only make the changes that you want to make. You have to want to make those changes, because as a hypnotherapist, I'm guiding you through the process, but it's actually you making all of those changes in your mind. I can't make you do it if it's not something that you don't want to do. It doesn't work that way. I mean, I really wish I could, because my kids would do everything I told them to do.
Yeah, right.
My husband would pick up all of his dirty washing off the floor. And also there's that myth that, oh, can you read my mind? I'd be a millionaire if I could read your mind. This is why people go to psychics, because they want to know the future, or they want to know all of these things. I mean, honestly, I'd be an absolute millionaire, and I'd have a top job in the CIA, wouldn't I, if I could read minds? I mean, it's a complete fallacy. I can't make you do something you don't want to do. I can't read your mind. I can't do any of that.
You touched on stage hypnosis there. I was quite surprised, really, that you even said there was a connection, because that's always just struck me as total showbiz and probably set up in a lot of cases. But do you think it is possible to make someone quack like a duck then?
If they want to, yeah.
If they
So
want
look,
to.
my trainer, Anthony Jacquin, so it's a father and son team. They are some of the world's best hypnotherapists, but Anthony is also actually a stage hypnotist. He's been on TV and he is amazing. But yeah, he does, they want to be part of the show. So he does get them into a hypnotic trance, and he can make them eat a lemon and think that it's an apple, but they were willing to do that. They were open to it. They opened their minds up, and they wanted to be part of the show. So it is, some of them are set up for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, there are frauds out there, but it is actually possible in a stage show to do that. But they want to do it. They want to be part of the show. Yeah, I think
that's interesting, because the whole kind of, as I said right at the start, really, the whole hypno start of the word hypnotherapy, and of course of hypnosis and so on and so forth, it kind of, in both cases, well, actually no, in the case of hypnosis, certainly I think a lot of people are under the impression that you're kind of giving your power away temporarily and so on and so forth. So you are voluntarily doing that, clearly, in hypnotherapy. Yeah, where am I going with that? I'm not sure.
I think it's actually putting you more in control of yourself rather than me being in control of you. I think that actually in hypnosis, because you can't, once you understand that you can't do anything that you don't want to do, then you're actually getting more control over your mind, and you're learning how to make your mind work for you. Because this is a supercomputer, and the way I like to think about it is, sometimes, again, I'm sorry, I'm talking about anxiety, and I don't mean to
don't do that.
focus on that, but I just think it's a good example. I think sometimes this supercomputer takes over, like it did with me. It completely took over and sort of started to take control of me. And I think that through hypnosis, I learned to actually gain control of my mind again, and I learned what it needed to thrive. And because it is a supercomputer, there's lots of needs that we as humans have to have, but one of those needs is to feed it, and I wasn't feeding it, and it then started to work against me, because it was creating all of these crazy imaginations that was making me feel anxious, but it was kind of bored, I think. So it was trying to entertain itself. This is the way I think about it. This is not how all hypnotists think about it, but that's how I think about it. And using hypnosis puts people more in control, and helps them learn how to get their mind to work for them.
Okay, so what is the process of hypnosis? How do you do it when someone's sitting in front of you on Zoom or whatever? What happens?
Have you ever driven from A to B, so driven home from somewhere and not really realized how you got there?
Oh yeah, totally, yeah.
So you were in
Especially on
hypnosis.
motorways, which is yeah.
Yeah. So you're in hypnosis. We're actually in hypnosis most of the time. How about, have you ever sat and watched a film and been kind of so engrossed in it that you almost feel like you're living it, and you don't know where those last few hours have gone, and then you've gone, wow, okay, that happens. If you've ever been in that situation, then you've been in hypnosis. But so yeah, look, hypnosis is just a relaxed, focused state. We can try some. Do you want to try some?
Yeah, if you want, so you don't make me quack like a duck. Yeah.
I promise I won't make you quack like a duck. Let's do a little bit of a warm-up exercise. I like to do this one. All right, so if you place your hands out in front of you like this, close your hands together, bend your arms as if you're in a prayer position, entwine your fingers, and then cross your thumbs like this. Okay, make sure your palms are together, and put your first two fingers up in the air like this. And I want you to put them up in front of your eyes so you can really look at that gap. And I don't want you to look anywhere else, but look at that gap. And I want you to imagine that you have two powerful magnets attached to your fingers that are bringing them closer and closer and closer together. That's it. And when they touch, you can just relax. That's it. Perfect. There you go. I've got another one for you. Okay.
That was weird. So what just happened?
You imagined that you had two powerful magnets strapped to your fingers, and that pulled them together. hypnosis is using the power of your imagination to create change in the mind. And basically anything that we imagine, your body responds accordingly. So you just made your fingers move because you were imagining that there was two powerful magnets attached to them. Let's do another one, okay?
Yeah.
Place your, no, I tell you what, place the hand that you write with out in front of you. So I'm left-handed, I'm a lefty, I'm putting mine out. And I want you to imagine that you're holding a really heavy bucket. So hold it like this and hold it really tight because it's a really heavy bucket. And then I want you to place your other hand out in front of you like this. And I want you to imagine that you have a bunch of helium balloons attached to your wrist, okay? That's dragging your hands lighter and higher and higher. Now close your eyes, please, Jared. That's it. And imagine that bucket is getting heavier and heavier, and I'm chucking water into that bucket now, and chucking stones into that bucket, and oh my gosh, how heavy is that? That's it. And your other hand is getting lighter and lighter and lighter and higher as those helium balloons drift further and further up into the sky. That's it. Amazing. Okay, I want you to keep your hands exactly where they are, and I want you to open your eyes.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty mad. That's pretty mad.
Our
I
mind
presume
is
I could have resisted it had I been determined to
absolutely, yeah, look,
foil it or something, I suppose. But
absolutely, yeah. I mean, and that's it, yeah. You know, there's lots of people that will say, I can't be hypnotized, you know, and yeah, all right, they probably won't be able to be hypnotized because they don't want to make that change. Like I said, I can't make you do anything that you don't want to do. So
yeah,
you know, if you're going to resist it, it's not going to happen. Like my husband's, believe it or not, my husband, I cannot hypnotize him at all. He's like, what are these fingers supposed to do then? And I'm like, babe, come on, you've got to use your imagination. No, doesn't work. This is all rubbish. The point is he's not open to it. You know, he's like that. He just wants to prove people wrong on everything. So he's like, no,
well,
not going to work.
there's a healthy element to that attitude, I would suggest.
Yeah, yeah. Don't tell him that though.
Um, you mentioned that you could desensitize trauma. So, I mean, using your imagination to put your fingers together or your arms apart or whatever, that's pretty impressive. But how do you desensitize trauma?
So
That word.
there's two different ways. Now, the beauty of hypnotherapy is that you don't have to tell me what the trauma is, because quite often people won't want to talk about it, and that's okay. So all I may know is that there has been a traumatic event in the past that is affecting what's happening to them now and is affecting their ability to move forward. So we go in two different ways. We do it from a dissociated perspective. So I never ever get anyone to relive a trauma. No one needs to go back to relive a trauma. That's horrific. I don't believe in that kind of therapy. Again, you know, some people do, and that's okay, but that's not my model of hypnotherapy. So I will bring people back either in a time machine. So they will imagine that they're in a time machine. They will go back to that moment, but as the person they are now, and they will see the younger them going through that, and they will tell that younger person all of the things they need to know to help them get through that moment, which desensitizes the trauma. However, if the trauma is really, really bad, I will take a different approach to it, in that I will get them to imagine that they are watching a TV screen, and that they are then watching themselves. So they dissociate themselves twice rather than just dissociate themselves once. They dissociate themselves twice. So they watch themselves watching the TV screen, if that makes sense. And we desensitize it that way. And yeah, there's lots of other elements to it, but basically they're the two approaches to going back. And every time we access a memory, we change it. So by going in and revisiting that memory, we're changing the way we think about it for the better this time.
How are we changing the way we think about it?
So because it's a traumatic event, with the time machine, for example, you're going back and giving that younger you all of the tools they need to get through that. And then it releases the younger you from that event, if that makes sense. You've kind of gone back, you revisited, you've put it to bed, let's say, kind of, you've said, right, okay, that's happened. I've gone back as the person as I am now. These are the steps that have got me to where I am now. You've spoken to the younger you and you've kind of released them from that, if that makes sense. And in the other respect, you know, if you're watching it through the TV, is that you're completely desensitized. So we change the modalities of it. So when something is really bright and vibrant, that makes it a really, really vivid memory. Okay, so if you've got a lovely memory and you want to preserve that memory, obviously you're going to change it if you access it. But if you want to preserve it, just as you close your eyes, you can just imagine that snapshot of that memory is bright and bold and up close. Okay, and when we use the TV for a traumatic memory, we will then change the memory and make it grainy and black and white and unfocused and far away. And by changing the modality of that memory, it just desensitizes it. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. I've heard Tony Robbins, the American coach, talk about exactly that, actually, about turning stuff into black and white and getting it a bit out of focus and all that kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Um, that's really interesting. Yeah. So coming back to your hypnotherapy practice, what do you do? What you decide that you've really benefited it from this a lot, and then you want to share it with other people, I guess, teach other people, whatever. So how did you go about that?
So my hypnotherapist was amazing. She was incredibly supportive, and she put me in contact with Freddie and Anthony Jacquin, who run training courses in becoming a hypnotherapist. So it was an intense, was it 6 months, 8 months? I think it was 6 months. And we would have 4-hour sessions every Sunday. And then we would be put into a hypno circle that we'd then have to go away and practice all the skills that we learn, and then come back every week and learn more until we got to the point where we could put full sessions together. I then went on from there to do a course in breath work for hypnotherapists, because a lot of what I do also incorporates breath work. So my kind of brand of hypnotherapy is a hybrid approach. So I utilize hypnotherapy, I utilize a small amount of tapping, lots of breath work.
What is breath work for people who don't know?
So basically, breathing is the master switch for everything. Okay, so when you're stressed or anxious, quite often you will breathe quite high up in the chest. You might well breathe like this. Are you okay?
Oh,
Are you okay?
yeah.
Take your time.
Okay, cough attack over. I sincerely hope. Kind of ironic that we were talking about breath work, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then I started coughing my guts up. Hopefully that's it. Having said that, if I was watching the One Show and Alex Jones or someone started having a coughing fit, I'd probably keep watching just to see if it happened again. So Maybe it'll push up the ratings. Okay, so yes, ironically, height of irony, we were talking about breath work, and you were just beginning to describe it when I chipped in with a contribution of my own. So, yeah, what is breath
that
work?
was the hypnosis kicking in. I didn't make you like cluck like a chicken. I made you cough.
Yeah, absolutely.
um, so look, so yeah, so when we're stressed, when we're anxious, we quite often breathe like this. So you know, really just kind of in the top part of our chest. And if we also have a tendency of holding our breath, but breath is so important because it's the master switch for thinking and feeling. So you know, emotions affect the breath, but breath can equally affect your emotions. And you know, it's been known for thousands and thousands of years how important breath is, and we've just kind of, it's fallen by the wayside. You know, it's like, yeah, it's just something we do, you know, but actually it's really important. And they found documents that date all the way back to the Ming era that kind of talked about breathing techniques and how breathing techniques were used to cure lots of illnesses back then. And it's becoming more and more evident and more popular. And actually, lots of doctors have started prescribing breathwork techniques to patients. But so, look, the breathwork technique that I absolutely love, I'd love to share with you guys actually. So the optimal breathing pattern for humans is 5 breath cycles a minute. Okay, and the way we achieve this is by breathing in for 6 seconds and out for 6 seconds. And if we breathe in this way, our brain waves and our heart rhythms work in unison. I don't know. I don't know if I can. I have got a thing that I can share with you, actually. I wonder if I can share my screen.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Let's have a look, because this is a really... Oh, here we go. Hang on. Share screen. I think I've got one here. This is a really good example of what happens. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so this is kind of like a normal heart rhythm, you know, roughly. And again, this is like normal waking brain waves. And when we breathe using 5 breath cycles a minute, this is what happens to our heart and our brain, our heart rhythm and our brain waves, which is just crazy, right? That it can have, breathing can have that effect on our organs. I'm just going to stop that share. I was desperate to show that with you. I share that with everyone. I love it. This stuff, only, I'm such a geek. This stuff just blows my mind. So if you think, oh, the other thing is that we've become really bad mouth breathers, and breathing through our mouth is really bad for us because our nose has lots of different hairs, which filters all of the pollutants and all of the horrible particles before it goes down into our lungs. And when we breathe in through our mouth, all of those pollutants just get dropped straight into our lungs. So, you know, I teach all of my clients to start consciously trying to breathe in and out through our nose. And also, really geeky, exciting part of this, if you do breathe in through your nose, you release this amazing molecule called nitric oxide. Okay, and this molecule is awesome. You may have heard of it, but it reduces blood pressure, it reduces cardiac plaque, it balances your hormones, it aids digestion. Honestly, it fends off viruses. They found that during COVID, people that breathed in through their nose didn't suffer as much as people that breathed in through their mouths. So, you know, breath work is just so important, and it's important that we spend time doing it. And I have a metronome. I think this goes back to my guitaring days, but I call it my clicker ticker. And I always encourage everyone to get one of these, and just breathe for 20 minutes every day. That could be 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening, and do their 6-6 breathing. Now, I don't know if your cough is going to allow this, Jared, but if you want to, we can give it a go.
Yeah, let's hope it. Well, yeah. Okay, yeah.
I'm jinxing you. Let's give this days ago, because I just thought it'd be really interesting to see, you know, how you feel before. And again, because you are a little congested, you might find it a little tricky to do, but you know, let's do what you can and let's give it a go. So I'm just gearing up my clicker ticker now. So when you breathe in, if you can, again, I know you're a bit congested, but if you can, try breathing in through your nose and out through your nose. And as we do this, we'll close our eyes and we'll try and imagine that the breath is going all the way down into our tummy, okay? Because as I said, we've got a tendency of stopping our breath here somewhere, but we really want to try and get it down into the diaphragm, all the way down into your tummy. And you can always put your hands on your tummy and feel it kind of inflate and deflate as you breathe. That's sometimes quite a good cue for people. So I'm going to start the clicker ticker and I'll count you in. And then I'll kind of leave you to just breathe that way. It'll just be interesting to see how you feel afterwards. Okay. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay. And in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and in and out. And in and out. And in and out. Continue with that now. Quite often, people that do this quite like to imagine as they breathe in that the breath is going all the way up a mountain. And as you breathe out, breath is coming all the way down the mountain. Or you might like to imagine that you're on a beach, and as you breathe in, those waves are coming in. And as you breathe out, waves are going back out again. So imagine you're breathing in this beautiful white light. It's filling your body. As you breathe out, you're breathing out all negativity, any stress or any tension. And just let your shoulders relax. And when you're ready, just open your eyes and find your own normal way of breathing. Did you find that changed your state at all?
Yeah, it's very calming.
Yeah.
Very calming. Yeah, I meditate a lot, so it was
You?
something I
Oh,
could slip into pretty easily, really. I suppose.
yeah.
Although
Amazing.
I would imagine anybody could, having said that, because everyone can
Yeah.
count to 6, can't they? I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly with the metronome. And this actually has a bit of a hypnotic effect as well, with the clicker ticker. And also I think people that find it hard to get their minds to calm down or relax just find that being able to focus on the clicker ticker really, really, really helps. Yeah, so that's one of my, I share that with all of my clients. No matter what they come to me for, they walk out with the 6-6 breath, because I think this is this is the future, honestly. And you'll know from meditating, it's just so important. And if you can just get people to take even 10 minutes every day for themselves, just to relax and, you know, be where they are and be here in the now, is everything, right?
Absolutely. And it's like you say, even if you're taking 10 minutes a day only, it's making a stance, isn't it? You know, you're making a stance against the kind of the madness of everyday chaos, and
Yeah.
grabbing a bit of yourself back, I think. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Which is what you did when you went for the hypnotherapy.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, agreed. But you know, I wanted to talk about also, I'm going a bit off piece, but I'm so excited by this. And I don't know, have you ever read the book The Power of Eight by Lynn McTaggart?
No.
So I've not long finished the book, but it's completely inspired me into a new kind of way of utilizing hypnotherapy. So um basically she's an expert on the science of spirituality, and she's run vast quantities of controlled scientific experiments measuring the power of people working together within a group. And I think there's lots of different elements of this, but this is the book that I've read. But I know there's lots of people kind of practicing this at the moment.
Mm.
But the healing that she experienced and witnessed was just phenomenal. So, you know, they started off with plants, and they would get this group together to send positive intention to these plants, and it was all done again in controlled scientific laboratory. So all of these seeds came from, you know, the same batch. I'm not a gardener, so I don't really know, but you know, the same batch, the same kind of family of seeds. They were all planted using the same soil. They were all given the same amount of light in the same room. But she would send a video feed of one batch of these plants to a group of people who would send positive intentions for this plant to grow and thrive and do really well. And this batch of plants grew massive and thrived so much better than its brothers and sisters, if plants have brothers and sisters, but the rest of its family, say. And then she kind of started focusing on people. So these groups would get together and they would send positive intentions to someone within the group, and they found, you know, completely miraculous changes, you know, in people, not only just in their health, but also kind of mentally as well. But also there would be a mirror effect. So whatever the intention you sent out would be, you would also receive. And I'm fascinated by this. So it's actually inspired me to actually do more group hypnotherapy sessions. So that's what I'm going to start concentrating on next year, because I'm just, as I said, fascinated by the idea of this, of a group of people coming together for a common intention. And I've just finished my first group anxiety session, and I just felt it was so powerful. Just everybody was there to kind of eliminate, or at least learn to control their anxiety. And everyone showed up every week, and the support they gave to each other was amazing. And I just think the change was so much more dramatic, as you know, within the group, than I think maybe even in one-to-one sessions. So just wanted to share that with you, because it's just really exciting. I'm just so excited about it.
It's a it's a place called the Heart Math Institute in California, which
Right.
does, I believe, does a lot of this kind of scientific studying of sort of what might be called spiritual type things. Yeah. Did you have people like Joe Dispenza and people like that?
Right. I'm just so, I love all of that, because, you know,
Yeah.
it's just amazing, isn't it?
Well, they're finding out stuff, aren't they? I mean, for hundreds of years, uh, perhaps actually that's a matter of contention, but for as long as people can remember, in witchcraft, people sort of say whatever you give out comes back to you threefold, etc. And that occurred to me. You know, you're sort of what you're saying there is kind of we're beginning to be able to measure that stuff scientifically, and
Yeah,
that could really like break a lot of barriers down, of course, because when people can make a distinction between stuff that's scientifically provable and stuff that is perhaps more superstition,
yeah,
then
woo woo.
yeah, if you like, yeah. Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, woo woo is a kind of weird word, isn't it? It's a weird concept, really, because I think
yeah,
some of the stuff that appears to cover is great, and
yeah,
other bits are just the province of weird people on the internet, really. So it's it's
yeah,
a it's a
yeah,
funny one, that. But yeah, I
yeah,
think it's really exciting that the idea that you might be able to start giving scientific credence
yeah. Quantifying it. It's
to all
just,
this kind of stuff. Yeah, and simply because it will then not just be the province of believers, but it will be open to anyone, cynic or not, I suppose.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I always remember there was a program, I don't know if you ever watched it, it was called My Name's Earl. It was a really silly program, but the concept of it always stuck with me. It's like, do good things and good things will happen to you. That was his saying, you know. He was like this, and it's right, exactly what you said. You know, what you put out there, you kind of get back. Well, that's the
Yeah,
theory anyway, right?
yeah, exactly, yeah, and yeah, the more this stuff can be studied, the less it becomes a theory, and the more it becomes an accepted truism.
Yeah,
Which is
exactly.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if people want to get in touch with you, then Corrina, to be a to get help from you, I guess.
Would you say
Um,
to be a subject?
I was thinking, would you say? Did you say client, patient, subject? Yeah, if they want to worship you or something, I suppose. Yeah, I guess you're open to offers. Um, so yeah. Anyway, yeah, you have a website, don't you?
Yeah, so I'm called Head On Hypnotherapy, and you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. I try to every Tuesday. I try and do Breathwork Tuesday. So I go live and we do some 6-6 breathing together. Obviously it's free. I just want people to do the 6-6 breath and take 10 minutes out for themselves. So I do that every Tuesday. And yeah, I've got a website, and you can contact me on any of those mediums, really.
Cool, cool. Okay, that's been really fascinating. And I apologise for my coughing fit, which
You're
is a
fine.
bit of a new one, but there you go. I always worry because I do these interviews and they're quite long. I always worry that I'm going to need to go to the loo halfway through, and that's never happened. I've always been quite pleased with myself. I didn't really anticipate coughing my lungs up in the middle of something. So yeah,
Oh,
sorry about
I
that.
feel the same. Sometimes my sessions are too, well, I have the last one I done was 2.5 hours long. And I was pretty desperate for a comfort break after that, I have to say.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny that kind of thing. That on a completely unrelated note, actually, this is probably well, it is well off topic, but I went to see this performance artist once in Hammersmith Riverside Studios, and there was nudity involved, and so they locked the doors. And halfway through, I realised I really needed a wee, but if I had gone out, I wouldn't have been able to come back in because of the locked door policy.
Yeah.
And it was the most intense experience of my life, quite frankly, trying to hold on whilst I watched the end of this performance, which has got nothing to do with any of this. But there we go.
Well, it
Yeah,
is.
no, that was
It's still the power of the mind, though. And you know, had you been able to kind of change, you know, your thought process, maybe it would be so bad. But quite honestly, sometimes when it's there and it's the only thought you can think of, it makes it 10 times worse, I think.
well, absolutely. I was bent double by the end.
Yeah.
It was very, I say, very intense experience. But yeah, intense experience, I suppose. I want people kind of come to you with, and hopefully leave without, I guess.
I'm sorry, say that again. I missed that bit. Sorry.
People come to you with an intensity of experience, and hopefully leave afterwards with that intensity dissipated or gone or whatever. So
Yeah. And but also what I haven't mentioned is that I quite like to give people a toolkit when they leave me. So, as well as the hypnotherapy, I also teach people CBT techniques. Obviously, I talked about the tapping techniques. We do kind of teach them bilateral stimulation. And it's just all about trying to distract the mind because hypnotherapy obviously changes the inner workings, but there will be times when you just think, oh my god, is this going to work, and you start to worry instantly about it. But I want people to go away with techniques to help manage every eventuality, and I just want it to be an all-round package. I don't want them to just come in, have the hypnotherapy, and I'm like, see you later. I mean, it's probably a really bad business model, to be fair, because I don't really want my clients to come back to me, but
Yeah. Yeah, same reason washing machines always break or whatever, I guess. But yeah, no, that's really generous and good of you. And but yeah, the value you deliver, I think, in those kind of situations should always kind of again come back to you, like you were saying before.
yeah, absolutely. And actually we just want to learn how to live our lives without being hampered by the things that are holding us back. And if I can help you do that, that's amazing. That's my job done, and I'm happy with that.
Brilliant. That seems like a good place to say yeah, thank you. That's been really good. And if people want to get to you to find you, it's Head On Hypnotherapy, and that's Instagram, Facebook, website.
Yeah.
And yeah, okay. I'll stay online to thank you afterwards, but I think I'll bring the interview to an end there and say thank you ever so much for your time, Corrina Beasley.
Thanks for having me.
Very welcome. Thank you.
Thanks.